There is a difference between listening and hearing. Hearing is subjective. Listening is objective. If we merely listen to words and do not hear their significance, then these talks will have little meaning. Communication is on same level at same time. Communion exists only when there is love. Understanding is denied when prejudice shapes our mind and heart. Compartmental thinking is a barrier to happiness. Happiness is not denial of sorrow, but understanding of sorrow. The conflict and pain of suffering dulls mind and heart. Suffering does not make for intelligence. Suffering does not bring comprehension. It is sign of ignorance to assume suffering cultivates thought and intelligence. Does suffering bring about understanding? What actually happens when we suffer? What do we mean by suffering? A psychological disturbance, superficial or profound, brought about by various causes, as loss of someone dear, as when there is frustration, when there is no meaning to life, when present has no meaning. So, either past or future becomes important. A life of confusion and contradiction is sorrow. A life of emptiness and ignorance is sorrow. A life of acquisition and ambition is sorrow. A life of sensory values is sorrow. What actually happens when you suffer? Instinctive response to sorrow is to escape from it, to take flight from it. We try to run away from sorrow through belief, through formulation, through explanation, through rituals and priests, through music, gurus or teachers. The very inquiry into cause of suffering becomes intellectual or verbal escape. For if one is aware, one realizes directly the cause. Cause and effect are not distant. They are not separate. Sufferer becomes capable in escapes, efficient in guarding himself against suffering. This cunning, this capacity to escape, is considered to be cultivation of intelligence. Change of object of escapes is considered growth. But suffering continues. How is suffering to be understood? Merely to search out its cause does not do away with suffering. Suffering comes with craving. Craving expresses itself in many forms. Greed, prejudice, worldliness, desire for continuance, and so on. Mere information concerning cause and its effect does not do away with suffering. The more you are acquainted, familiar with suffering, more you love it, more you invite, converse with it, the more it gives you perfume, its significance. If you run away from it through any avenues of escape, religious or scientific, or find substitutions for suffering, suffering invariably continues. Suffering is to be understood. Suffering is not to overcome. For that which is overcome has to be conquered again and again. Suffering can be understood and transcended only through self-knowledge. With self-knowledge comes right thinking. Right thinking does not come into being if there is condemnation, if there is identification. You do not deny beauty. Beauty is not denial of ugliness. If you refuse suffering, you also refuse happiness. For happiness is not opposite of suffering. Understanding of suffering comes with right thinking. Being aware of every thought, being aware of every feeling, being aware of every action. Right thinking comes. Only right thinking can dissolve cause of pain and suffering.